The Alkebu-Lan Revivalist Movement presents Africa Speaks with Alkebu-Lan on Galaxy Radio 102.5 FM and GalaxyAsiwi.com, the only de-brainwashing station. Weekly discussions and live debate on all issues affecting the African community at home and abroad. Tune in Mondays 8 to 10 p.m. and have your say as we talk it straight and make it plain. It's live, it's hot, it's scintillating, it's real. It's Africa Speaks with Alkebu-Lan on Galaxy Radio, the only de-brainwashing station.
We have a new education, a new determination, and you heard the voices in Harlem, the drums in Uptown Kingston, and you. The gong, he said that we are real. Oh Lord, second to none, how we don't know the deal. I'm at the crossroads waiting, chases meet him here. The view so blissful, life is good at Pinnacle. We have a new determination, a new way of thinking, and you, yes we do. Only you I can rely on. Let's make our way to Zion with you.
History is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is also a compass that people use to find themselves on the map of human geography. History tells of people where they have been and what they have been, where they are and what they are. Most important, history tells a people where they still must go and what they still must be. The relationship of history to the people is the same as the relationship of a mother to her child.
Tendai Mwari, welcome to Africa Speaks with Alkebu-Lan on Galaxy Radio, www.galaxyafiwi.com, the only de-brainwashing station. This is Tafadzwa Shakara Bandaka. Tonight is our third in this season's on-air Mosiah Sessions and is a special one. 128 years ago today, in the Parish of St. on the island of Jamaica, a prophet was born. The most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League of the World, UNIA-ACL, and the inspiration for the Mosiah season. So we have designated the 17th day of the 8th month Mosiah Day. It is a day when we engage in ceremony, libation, and spiritual reflection in honor of the life and legacy of Papa Garvey. So, the phone and text-in lines won't be open tonight, as we will be drawing from our special archives to honor our most eminent prophet and king. First, we will hear the word sounds of the Mosiah himself as he delivers his Africa for the Afrikans message. Then we will play an exclusive interview with the late master teacher, warrior scholar, and official historian on the life and legacy of Marcus Mosiah Garvey and the UNIA-ACL, Baba Tony Martin. The in-depth interview conducted by Brother Omowale covers a wide range of topics, including the impact and legacy of Mama Amy Ashwood Garvey, the subject of his last book in the new Marcus Garvey Library series, the scholarship of Dr. Robert Hill, his perspective on the documentary Look for Me in the Whirlwind, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's role in the UNIA, and the impact of the Garvey movement on non-Africans such as Ho Chi Minh. We will round off with an excerpt from a classic message from Brother Leader Bandaka from 1998, the year of the very first community Mosiah observance, entitled The Messiah Has Come. But first, as is customary for the Mosiah season, we will read the affirmation for today and the children's memory verse from our book of Mosiah Daily Affirmations, after which we will hear the word sounds of the prophet himself, Marcus Mosiah Garvey. For more information on the Mosiah season, including tomorrow's session, the phenomenal women of the Black Cross Nurses, visit www.alkebu-lan.org/Mosiah. Mosiah affirmation for day 17. Pray for revelation. Pray to your Lord and Master to reveal what you are best fitted for, so that you may give to the world something new, so that you may rise the next morning and be a new genius that may baffle and startle a wandering world. Do not live in the world and pass out of it like chickens and sheep. When you die, leave behind you the memory of great men and women. Such is the wisdom of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Hail to the power of the word. Commentary by Brother Leader Bandaka. You are a unique manifestation of Mwari, the Creator. Thus, you possess innate gifts of ingenuity intended for the glory of Mwari. Revelation comes first when you are convicted beyond a doubt that you possess these Mwari-like qualities. Then through prayer, which is the invocation of Mwari's spirit in you, through meditation, affirmations, and supplication to Mwari in all Mwari's supreme manifestations. Have faith, pray, and reaffirm your convictions daily, and your gifts and ingenuity will be made manifest through the revelations that will come. Such is the wisdom of our spiritual leader, Brother Leader Mbandaka. Hail to the power of the word. Children's memory verse for day 17. No one knows when the hour of Africa's redemption cometh. It is in the wind, it is coming. One day, like a storm, it will be here. Tenda Mwari. Garvey lives. Mosiah lives.
And now this 24-hour radio. And now this 24-hour radio.
Galaxy Radio 102.5, a Philly station.
There is no future for people who deny their past. My foreparents, my grandparents, my mother, my father did not suffer and die to give me an education to slight, oppress, or discourage my people. Because whatsoever education I acquired out of their sacrifice of over 300 years, I shall use for the salvation of the 400 million black people of the world. And the day when I forsake my people, may God Almighty say there shall be no more life for you. I unequivocally rejected the racist assumption of much white American Christianity, namely that God had created the black man inferior and that he had intended Negroes to be a servant class, hewers of wood and drawers of water. Well, I predicated my view of man on the doctrine of Imago Dei. All men, regardless of color, are created in the image of God. Now, from this premise followed the equality of all men and the brotherhood of all men. The biblical injunction of Acts 17:26 reminds us that he created of one blood all nations of men that dwell on the face of the earth. I was most interested in brotherhood within his own race, because if Negroes are created in God's image and Negroes are black, then God must in some sense be black. White man has the idea of a white God, let him worship his God as he desires. We have found a new ideal, because whilst our God has no color, and yet it is human to see everything through one's own spectacles, and since the white people have seen their God through their white spectacles, we have only now started to see our God through our own spectacles. For we believe in the God of Ethiopia, the everlasting God, God of Father, God of Son, God of Holy Ghost, the one God of all ages. That is the God in whom we believe, but we shall worship him through the spectacles of Ethiopia. For 250 years, we have struggled under the burden and rigors of slavery. We were maimed, we were brutalized, we were ravaged in every way. We are men. We have hopes, we have passions, we have feelings, we have desires just like any other race. The cry is raised all over the world of Canada for the Canadians, of America for the Americans, of England for the English, of France for the French, of Germany for the Germans. Do you take it unreasonably that we, the blacks of the world, should raise the cry of Africa for the Africans? The man, we represent the new Negro. His back is not yet against the wall. We do not want his back against the wall, because that would be a peculiar and desperate position. We do not want him there. It is because of this that we are asking for fair compromise. Where the Belgians have control of the Belgian Congo, which they cannot use, they have not the resources to develop, nor the intelligence. The French have more territory than they can develop. There are certain parts of Africa in which they cannot live at all. So it is for you to come together and give us a United States of Africa. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are not going to be a race without a country. God never intended it, and we are not going to abuse God's confidence in us as men. We are men, human beings, capable of the same acts as any other race, possessing under fair circumstances the same intelligence as any other race. Now Africa's been sleeping, not dead, only sleeping. Today Africa's walking around not only on her feet, but on her brains. You can enslave, as was done for 300 years, the bodies of men. You can shackle the hands of men. You can shackle the feet of men. You can imprison the bodies of men, but you cannot shackle or imprison the minds of men. Dive down, black men, and dig. Reach up, black men and women, and pull all nature's knowledge to you. Turn ye around and make a conquest of everything, north and south, east and west. And then when you have wrought well, you will have merited God's blessing, you will have become God's chosen people, and naturally you will become leaders of the world. And as you bow down to the white man today, so a lot of races bow down to you and call you a race of masters because of the superiority of your minds and your achievements. Because no race has the last word on culture and on civilization. They do not know what we are capable of. They do not know what we are thinking. They're thinking in terms of dreadnoughts, battleships, aeroplanes, submarines. You know what we're thinking about? That is our own private business. So give us credit for being able to use our minds. And with people becoming conscious of themselves, determined to use their minds, you do not know to what extent they can go. Liberate the minds of men, and ultimately you will liberate the bodies of men. We love the white race, not for social fellowship, but for the common brotherhood of God intended we should live. What satisfaction can anyone get in being happy and see his brother wallowing in filth, dirt, and disease? How can you be happy living in luxury and your brother's living in disease? And then when you try to help the one out of the disease, the subtle culprit talks about disloyalty. Black men of Carthage, black men of Ethiopia, of Timbuktu, of Alexandria gave the light of civilization to this world. Ethiopia shall stretch forth her hands unto God, and princes shall come out of Egypt. Because classes, nations, races have been quite for over 4 centuries. Who has merely borne abuse, insult, humiliation, whose forbearance can only be compared to the prophet Job, has likewise lifted his bowed head and raised it up to God's skies and cried out, I am a man, and demand a man's chance and a man's treatment in this world. But I shall teach the black man to see beauty in his own kind and stop bleaching his skin and otherwise looking like what he's not. Slavery, race mixture, miscegenation had occurred because the African woman had no protection from the slave master. Therefore, there is no need today for black people to themselves freely continue a practice that smacks so much of slavery. Our critics say that the race problem will be solved through higher education, through better education, and black and white will come together. That day will never happen until Africa is redeemed. Because if those who like W.E.B. Du Bois believe that the race problem will be solved in America through higher education, they will walk between now and eternity and never see the problem solved. God made man Lord of his creation, gave him possession and ownership of the world. And you have been so darned lazy that you have allowed the other fellow to run away with the whole world, and now he's bluffing you and telling you that the world belongs to him and that you have no part in it. I don't have to apologize to anybody for being black, because God Almighty knew exactly what he was doing when he made me black. If black people knew their glorious past, then they would be more inclined to respect themselves. Yes, you heard of Johnny Walker Red and black. Well, he had his adversities, but he's still going strong. Well, I intend with your help and God's grace to continue, because my work has only just begun. And future generations shall have in their hands the guide by which they shall know the sins of the 20th century. I know, and I know you too believe in time, but we shall wait patiently for 200 years, if need be, to face our enemies through our posterity. When my enemies are satisfied, in life I shall come back, or in death even to serve you as I served before. In life I shall be the same, in death I shall be a terror to the cold. Then count on me to be the real Marcus Garvey I would like to be. If I may come in an earthquake or a plague or a pestilence or as God would have me, then be assured that I shall never desert you and make your enemies triumph over you. Will I not go to hell 1,000,000 times for you? If I die in Atlanta, my work will only just then begin. For I shall live in the physical or the spiritual to see the day of Africa's glory. When I am dead, wrap the mantle of the red, the black, and the green around me, for in the new life I shall rise up with God's wisdom blessing to lead the millions of the heights and the triumph that you well know. Look for me in a world when there is storm. Look for me all around you, for with God's grace I shall come back with countless millions of black men and women who have died in America, those who have died in the West Indies, and those who have died in Africa, to aid you in the fight for liberty, freedom, and life. Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave you. Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave you. They gave leadership to our foreparents, and that leadership made them slaves. But we have decided to find a leadership of our own to make ourselves free men. Our great scholars, having passed through the colleges and universities, have thrown away the blessed record. Babylon did it. Assyria did it. France under Napoleon did it. Germany under Prince von Bismarck did it. America under George Washington did it. Africa with 400 million black people can do it. If you cannot do it, if you are not prepared to do it, then you will die. You race of cowards, you race of imbeciles, you race of good-for-nothings. If you cannot do what other men have done, what other nations have done, what other races have done, then you had better die. Can we do it? We can do it. We shall do it. We have prayed to God for vision and for leadership. And He has given us our universal vision. A vision that will not limit our possibilities to America. A vision that will not limit our possibilities to the West Indies, but a vision that said there must be a free and redeemed Africa. Christ the crucified, Christ the despised. We appeal to you for help, for succor, for leadership. When you endeavor to carry your burden up the heights of Calvary, when white men scorned you, when white men scorned you, when white men spat upon you, when white men pierced your side out of which blood and water gushed forth, it was a black man in the name of Simon the Syrian who took your cross and bore it up the heights of Calvary. And now that we are bearing our burden of being so heavy, we just ask that you just help us on up the heights. Oh yes, the cause is grand, the cause is glory. Surely we shall not turn back. Oh, sail on, sail on, sail on, almighty ship of state, sail on until the flag of the red, the black, and the green is perched upon the hills of South Africa. Because the time has come for the black man to forget his hero worship of other races and to create and emulate heroes of his own. We must canonize our own saints, create our own martyrs, and elevate the positions of fame and honor black men and women who have made a distinct contribution to our racial history. Sojourner Truth is worthy of a place of sainthood alongside the Joan of Arc. Crispus Attucks and George William Gordon are entitled to the halo of martyrdom with no less glory than the martyrs of any other race. Toussaint Louverture's brilliancy as a soldier or a statesman outshone that of any other people. Hence he's entitled to the highest place as a hero among men. Because Africa's created millions and countless millions of black men and women in war and peace, whose luster and bravery outshone that of any other people. So why not see good and perfection in ourselves? We must inspire our literature and promulgate a doctrine of our own without any apologies to the powers that be. That's why this hour and God. Let sentiments and cross opinions go to the winds. We are entitled to our own opinion and are not obligated to or bound by the opinions of others. If others laugh at you, return the laughter to them. If they mimic you, return the compliment with equal force. Because they have no more right to dishonor, discredit you in manhood than you have in dealing with them. Honor them when they honor you. Disrespect and disregard them when they vilely treat you. Their arrogance is but skin deep, an assumption that has no foundation in morals or in law. They have sprung from the same family tree of obscurity as we have. Their history is as rude in its primitiveness as ours. Their ancestors were running wild in living in trees of branches like monkeys as ours. They made human sacrifices, ate the flesh of their own dead and wild meat from beasts for centuries, even as they have accused us of doing. Their cannibalism is more prolonged than ours. When we were embracing the banks of the Nile, they were still drinking blood out of the skulls of their conquered dead. After our civilization had reached the noonday of progress, they were still living in holes with bats, rats, and other insects and animals. After we had already unfathomed the mystery of the stars and reduced the heavenly constellation to minute and regular calculus, there were still backwoodsmen living in ignorance and in blatant darkness. Is indebted to us for the benefits of civilization. They stole our arts and sciences from Africa. Then why should we be ashamed of ourselves? Their modern improvements to be reflected and resurrected by our generation and our posterity. Why should we be discouraged if somebody laughs at us today? Who's to tell what tomorrow will bring forth? Did they not laugh at Christ, Moses, Muhammad? Was there not a Carthage, Greece, and Rome? So we see and have changes every day. So pray, work, be steadfast, and be not dismayed. Because as the Jew is held together by his religion, the white races by the assumption and the unwritten law of superiority, the Mongolian by the precious tie of blood, likewise the black man must unite in one grand racial hierarchy. Our union must know no crime, no nationality. But let us all hold together in every country and every crime, making a racial empire upon which the sun shall never set. Let no voice but your own speak to you from the depths. Let no influence but your own rouse you in time of peace and time of war. Hear all, but attend only to that which concerns you. Your allegiance shall be to your God, your race, your country. Remember that the Jew in his political and economic origin is always first a Jew. The white man is first a white man under all circumstances, so you can do no less. Be black, buy black, think black, and all else will take care of itself. Let no one inoculate you with evil doctrines to suit his own conveniences. Charity begins at home. So first to thyself be true, and thou canst not then be false to no man. Because God and nature first made us what we are. And out of our own creative genius, we make ourselves what we want to be. Follow always that great law. Let God and the sky be our limit and eternity our measurement. There is no height to which you cannot climb without the active intelligence of your own mind. Mind creates, and as much as we desire in nature, we can have through the creation of our own minds. And today, being scientifically the weaker race, you shall treat others only as they treat you. But in your homes and everywhere possible, you must teach the higher development of science to your children. And make sure that we have a race of scientists par excellence. For in religion and science lies our only hope to withstand the evil designs of modern materialism. Never forget your God. Remember that we live, work, and pray for a binding racial hierarchy, whose only natural, spiritual, and political limits shall be God and Africa at home and abroad. With God's dearest blessings, I leave you for a while. One love. Marcus Mosiah Garvey.
24-hour radio. It's a fact of life. 24-hour radio.
102.5 Afrika Station.
Tenamori, this is Africa Speaks with Alkebu-Lan, and we are indeed privileged to have with us a special program this evening. We have the foremost scholar on the life and legacy of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, our elder, our Baba, our hero, Baba Tony Martin. We just want to give our greetings and blessings and welcome to Africa Speaks. Baba Tony Martin, welcome.
Tendai Mari, thank you very much, my good brother. I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, Tendamari. I understand you have a new book out to add to your voluminous works of books. What is the name of this new book that you have?
Well, first of all, I need to warn your readers that it's a very long-winded title. Okay. The short title is Amy Ashwood Garvey, and the longer subtitle is Pan-Africanist, Feminist, and Mrs. Marcus Garvey, #1, or A Tale of Two Amys.
Wow, that is quite a title. I must admit, though, I have heard longer titles, though. So this is probably one of the few books about Amy Ashwood Garvey. I mean, I'm sure there are not many others around. Are there any others around that you're aware of?
There's one written by Lionel Yard,
okay,
a man who was instrumental in making available to me much of the research material that I used.
Right.
But I think that mine is the only one by a quote-unquote professional historian, for what it's worth.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about Mama Amy Ashwood Garvey, and what kind of work did she do during that period?
Amy Ashwood Garvey was the first wife of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey.
Right.
Garvey was married twice. Both his wives had the same name, Amy, so this may confuse some listeners.
Okay.
The first wife was Amy Ashwood. The second wife was Amy Jakes. Amy Ashwood was born in Port Antonio, Jamaica. She grew up both in Jamaica and in Panama, and she met Garvey in 1914, just a few days after Garvey had arrived back from Europe, and a few days before he began his great organization, the Universal Negro Improvement Association. So that's her early background.
Right. Okay. And she was the first wife of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, but within her own right, she did a great deal of work. Can you just highlight some of the work she did within the UNIA, and then later outside of the UNIA?
Certainly. She was a very precocious person. From very young, she showed signs of being an activist and a politically, very conscious person. As a matter of fact, when Garvey met her, she was acting as a principal speaker at a debate.
Okay.
This debate was organized by the East Queen Street Baptist Debating Society or something like that in Kingston, Jamaica.
Okay.
Garvey was very impressed. He was in the audience. He listened to her, and she was young. She was about 17,
right,
but she was already a very, very good speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And a relationship developed, and Garvey started the UNIA a few days later, and she became one of the earliest activists within the UNIA in Jamaica. She traveled around the country with Garvey. They did a variety of things. They had meetings, of course. They raised funds. They looked after sick people. They visited the hospitals. They fed the poor of Kingston at Christmas time. They tried to start an employment agency. They tried to start an industrial school, among other things. They also had a whole bunch of literary activities. Sometimes they would have debating contests within the organization. Sometimes they would recite the works of African American poets like Paul Laurence Dunbar, etc., etc. So she was very actively involved from the very beginning of the UNIA in all of that kind of activity.
Okay, Tenamara, she did specific work because she is described in the book as being a feminist. So she did, amongst her duties, she did particular work in relation to women. Could you just elaborate on that for us, please?
Yes, in her later years, especially after she broke with Garvey, she veered more and more towards feminism. Although she never gave up her Pan-Africanism, she was a staunch Pan-Africanist for her entire life, you might say. Some of the feminist work began even, in the UNIA in the very early years in Kingston. They would sort of look after domestic servants, kind of thing, look after their interests and so on. Later on, she tried to start a school of domestic science, she called it, to get better working conditions for people who did domestic work in Jamaica and so on. She organized women's organizations in the Caribbean, in West Africa. She did extensive research into the lives and social conditions of women in West Africa. I had the opportunity to see some of those manuscripts. Almost all were unfinished, unfortunately. But at one time in the 1940s in West Africa, and by West Africa I mean several countries, Ghana, Togo, Cameroon, Nigeria, and other countries as well. She had a little army of informants, who would go around and get information for her, and then, and they would give it to her. And she was hoping to do a whole series of books. One she called Mother Africa, among other things. Yes, one she called Black Millions, I'm not sure why. So all of this was feminist work. She toured the West Indies, the Caribbean in 1957. She spoke to women's organizations all over, in Suriname, in Guyana, in Aruba, in Trinidad and Tobago, in Barbados, among other things. So this was just an idea of some. This does not by any means exhaust the feminist work that she did, but this is some of it.
Yeah. All right, wonderful. Okay, then I also understand that Mama Amy Jakes Garvey traced her lineage back to Ghana. Is that the case?
Yeah, this is Amy Ashwood, of course.
So Amy Ashwood,
yes,
sorry. Yes.
Still wife number 1. Although Amy Jake's wife number 2 does weave in and out of this book. Of necessity is impossible to speak of one wife without mentioning the other.
Amy Ashwood, I meant.
Yes, but with Amy Ashwood, she traced her ancestry back to Ashanti in Ghana. And in a way that was very, very similar to what Alex Haley did 30 years later.
Right.
With his tracing of his ancestry.
So she predated Alex Haley?
30 years, by 3 decades.
Okay.
So there's no possibility of her having plagiarized Alex Haley.
Okay.
In fact, I keep wondering whether Alex Haley plagiarized her.
Okay.
Because her tracing of her roots was very well documented.
Or maybe it's because of great minds thinking alike?
It might very well be.
Okay.
Yeah. In Trinidad, sometimes we say fools seldom differ. Great minds think alike and fools seldom differ.
Right.
Yes, but in her youth in Jamaica, her father took her to see her great-grandmother, somebody she called Granny Damas, D-A-M-A-S.
Okay.
And Granny Damas had come to Jamaica as a girl. She had been captured and enslaved, from Ghana. And she remembered something about her background. This is Granny Damas. And Granny Damas was able to tell young Amy Ashwood that she was from some place in Africa called Daman. And in 1923-24, Amy Ashwood was in England, and she met J.B. Dankwa, who later became a major political figure in Ghana. And Dankwa told her that there was a place called Daman in the state of Ashanti in Ghana. So when Amy came to Ghana eventually in 1946, this is like over 20 years later, she followed up those leads. And she met the Asante Hene, Prempe II, that's the king of the Ashanti. And he arranged for her to do, research to meet people who were knowledgeable in the history of the society. Eventually, they were able to take her back to Daman. And the griot, as in Alex Haley, local historians, they recited the history of the place. And then Amy was able to fill in whatever, information she had from what her great-grandmother had told her. And they all agreed that her great-grandmother had been a member of the royal family of Daman. That is, a member of the Daman Hene's family. Her great-grandmother was a young girl who was captured and sold into slavery. There was a war. Some sources say 1824, some say 1834. I'm not sure which is correct. But there was a war between Joaben, that's one of the states of Ashanti, and the rest of Ashanti. And Daman, where Amy Ashwood's great-grandmother came from, was within the Joaben area. Joaben lost that war, and apparently the Daman Hene, the chief of the king of Daman, had 4 daughters, and one was not accounted for when the fighting finished, and she apparently was Amy's great-grandmother, who had been captured and taken to Jamaica. There was a formal hearing. It was very fascinating, the Asante Hene. The Asante Hene, by the way, is considered by many to be the most powerful traditional ruler in the whole of the African continent. A person who has great prestige and power still up to today. And the Asante Hene convened an official meeting at his palace. He had the Joaben Hene there, the king of Joaben. He had the Daman Hene, the king of Daman. Amy Ashwood was there, the various linguists and scribes. It was an official gathering. and they listened to Amy's story, they listened to the story of the Namanhene and the griots and so on. And the Asandahene, at the end of this procedure, concluded that yes, Amy Ashwood had really successfully traced her ancestry, and he formally welcomed her back, as a lost daughter of Ashanti and so on. She actually lived in the Asandahene's palace for a short while thereafter.
That's wonderful. Okay. Also, Mama Amy Ashwood, she also did a great deal of work within the students' union. I believe she was one of the founders of, is it the West African Students' Union?
Yes, WASU, that's right. Yes. Yes, when she was in London around about 1924, she founded what initially was known as the Nigerian Progress Union. But even from the very beginning, there were people from other West African countries there, especially Ghana, which was the Gold Coast in those days. So eventually, in about a year or two, they changed the name to the more appropriate West African Students' Union. And WASU became, in time, a major player in the development of Pan-African consciousness in West Africa and around the African diaspora. Several major political figures in West African politics, had their early political activity in WASU. President Nkrumah in the 1940s was a chairman of WASU. President Sylvanus Olympio of Togo, the man who led Togo to independence, he also was a president of WASU. And this absolutely, crucial and very important organization was founded by Amy Ashwood Garvey in London in 1924.
Okay. Tenamore. Right. I want to move on to some of the great, or maybe not so great, scholars that we have in our community who've been doing certain work on the life and legacy of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. You, of course, are world renowned as being the foremost scholar on the life of and legacy of our, who we refer to as the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. What is your opinion on Robert Hill and his work? Because it does seem to differ somewhat with your own work. What is your view on his work, if that's not too personal a question?
Robert Hill has done some very important work in terms of gathering the papers, many of the archival records. He has published them in several volumes, and he has made them very accessible. People would normally have had to do a lot of work in the actual archives themselves, but he has pulled them together in a very easily accessible place. I've interacted with him many times. We have been on panels together. I would think that my basic orientation, is somewhat, my perspective on Garvey, I think, is somewhat different from his. I see Garvey as a very important intellectual figure, someone who was able to articulate a body of thought, a very consistent body of thought. He might not have originated what we call black or African nationalism, but he was able to articulate it, to break it down in a way that the mass of our people could understand, and he was able to build an organization without parallel in our history around those ideas. So I think Garvey was a genius and a very erudite person. I think Robert Hill tends to see Garvey more as somebody who just sort of followed white example.
Right.
For example, in the introduction to his volumes, he says that Garvey had an African legion. And he says that the reason why Garvey had an African legion is because the Jews had a legion somewhere in Palestine or someplace. But of course, the legion is a generic term. Everybody in history has had a legion. The Romans had legions, and the Roman Catholic Church has a legion of Mary, and but one doesn't have to follow any specific person. How he made that jump of logic, I do not know. In fact, in the States, they even have something they call Legionnaire's disease from some other legion who got
it over here as well.
Got it over here as well, okay. But somehow he figured that because the Jews had a legion, he just arbitrarily, made a logical leap.
Right. And so there's no historical record
none
to back him up.
No.
Okay.
He did something similar in the introduction to those volumes, where, Garvey had what he called Liberty Halls, the basic, most important meeting place of Garvey's organization was called, Liberty Hall, all over the world. Anywhere you went in the world, you could ask, well, where's Liberty Hall? And you would go and you'd be in a familiar environment. People would be reading Garvey's speeches and whatnot, singing the same songs and whatnot, same rhetoric. Hill claims that the Irish had a Liberty Hall, which they probably did. I wasn't aware of it, but I'm sure they did. And he makes the same kind of a logical leap, over this logical chasm, and tries to link the two. He says, well, if the Irish had a Liberty Hall, therefore Garvey must have gotten his idea of Liberty Hall from the Irish. And again, this is like what we call a non sequitur. It doesn't follow. When something logically doesn't follow from something else. Yes. And what I guess he did not know was that the African Americans had a Liberty Hall in Philadelphia long before the Irish one.
And that is on record?
That's on record. In fact, I actually record that in another one of my books, a book called Rare Afro-Americana, one of my very earliest books. Yes, and some of the people involved with the Liberty Hall in Philadelphia in the 19th century later on became associated with Garvey. So if one wanted to make that kind of a link, there'd be much more in terms of corroborative evidence to link Garvey's Liberty Hall with Philadelphia Liberty Hall and the Irish Liberty Hall. I know in that documentary film that we don't like at all, the documentary done by the public broadcasting service.
I'd like to get onto that, because he was instrumental. Was he the main sort of historical reference of that documentary? Yes,
he was the main reference there. And in that documentary, he makes the point that Garvey was one of the great orators of our time, and he makes the point that there was some...
Just for our listeners, sorry, Baba Tony, that this is a documentary by Stanley Nelson, and it's called Look for Me in the Whirlwind.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, it was shown on PBS in the States, Public Broadcasting Service.
Okay.
It has been shown all over the world since then. They're very well connected. But in that film, I know Hill was like you said, the official historian. And in that film, they make the point that Garvey, as you know, was one of the world's greatest orators of his time, something that even his enemies acknowledged. But there was some white preacher who was preaching in those days, whose name I don't remember. And again, there's the same logical leap that Garvey must have patterned his oratory after this white preacher.
I see.
Garvey is a man who used to go to churches in Jamaica and listen to the preachers, and he would go by the seaside and practice by himself and imitate what he heard. Long before he ever heard any white preacher in America, he was already one of the great orators of his day. So that there's a tendency there, on Hill's part, to sort of turn Garvey into a sort of a white-derived figure, with no black agency. So I differ with him there, and in some other areas as well.
Okay, and just to continue with the documentary, it does have some really distressing scenes of some young children stoning him. Does that ring true at all?
No, there's absolutely no historical evidence to justify that. There were several falsifications like that in that particular documentary. Not only does he have children stoning Garvey, but this is the very last scene in the documentary. This is what you walk away with.
Yes.
That's how the documentary ends. And he also has Garvey in this scene walking into a hovel, a little hut, a hovel. And Garvey lived in one of the more affluent areas, Lady Musgrave Road, in Kingston. There certainly were no hovels on Lady Musgrave Road. In fact, when Garvey left to go back to England, I believe that his house was actually bought by the Indian High Commissioner, I think, or some High Commissioner. Yes. So that's a total fabrication. And there are other fabrications in that documentary. Right. It's very hard to resist the temptation to suggest that documentary was deliberately designed to try to belittle, Marcus Garvey.
Okay, and Robert Hill, what were his sources of sponsorship, from what you're aware of?
I don't recall who sponsored the film, but his research was sponsored by a variety of agencies. I remember one year he got the largest grant that anybody in the whole of the United States got from, I think it was from the National Endowment of the Humanities. And we're talking about millions of dollars here.
Right. Millions, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, cumulatively. And there were grants from other major funding agencies. Yes. And so like I said, and these are grants that even, like white professors and stuff would be, buying to try to get. But he got 1 year at least. I remember he got more than he did, or even the white professors and people who were on paper much more highly qualified.
Okay. What have you tried to do in terms of counteracting this particular documentary?
Several of us, when the documentary came out, put together a special issue of a Caribbean newspaper in New York. And it was like a supplement, a tabloid-sized supplement. And the whole issue was devoted to this documentary. Marcus Garvey Jr., Garvey's older son, had an article. Garvey's younger son, Julius Garvey, Dr. Julius Garvey.
So just to clarify, Baba Tony, so both of Marcus Garvey's sons and yourself, the foremost scholar on Marcus Garvey, refuted this particular documentary.
Yes.
Okay.
And several other people did as well in that special supplement. For example, Elome Brath, venerable old Garveyite from Harlem, a man who has been a Garveyite all his life, one of the most active and effective Pan-Africanists in the world today. He also wrote an article there. Dr. Mosiah Sessions, a man who popularized Afrocentrism, he has an article in there as well. And there were some others as well.
Right. Yeah. So that's clear then.
Yes.
So we shouldn't really be investing in this particular piece of negative propaganda on Marcus Garvey.
Right, and I might add also that the website for my publishing company, www.themajoritypress.com, we also had a little kind of a forum going, where people were writing in, giving their, expressing their opinions and so on, and that's still available on that website today.
Right. Okay. I wanted to move on to some of the people who are really inspired by the legacy, by the great work of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. My understanding is that Elijah Muhammad, first of all, was a corporal in the Detroit branch of the UNIA. Is that the case?
The second Mrs. Garvey this time, Amy Jakes Garvey, she says that somebody told her so. I myself have not found any independent, evidence to say one way or another whether he was or was not a corporal in the uniformed ranks of the UNIA. I have, however, been able to establish, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that Elijah Muhammad was, in fact, a member of the UNIA. Whether he was a corporal, I don't know.
Okay.
But I know he was a member of the UNIA. He joined shortly after he came to Detroit from Georgia around about 1923-24. And he was an active member. He saved some money within the organization and used some of that money later as seed money to get the Nation of Islam going.
Right. So it was. So basically, his grounding was in the UNIA.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
I understand. In terms of the Nation of Islam, that a lot of the structures and a lot of the attire, etc., are very similar to the Nation of Islam. Is that so?
Yes, I have a photograph from a 1921 meeting of the Cincinnati, Ohio UNIA in one of my books, Marcus Garvey, Hero. And I often ask my students to look at that photograph and tell me what organization this is. And they almost always guess the Nation of Islam because the kind of ambiance, the aura, the vibes, if you like, around a Garvey meeting was so similar to the Nation of Islam. The men were very well dressed in their suits. Many had on bow ties. The women were well dressed. The women in long white garments did security in the corridors. In the ads, it was this particular photo was in some kind of a cinema apparently.
Right.
The men, of course, also were on security duty, standing in the ads. It looked very, very much like a like a Nation of Islam meeting. And that's one, maybe superficial, but still one indication of the similarity. But if you look at more substantive things, there's the same emphasis on racial pride, on economic self-reliance, on a very, very effective propaganda organ. Elijah Muhammad's newspaper, Muhammad Speaks, was the largest circulation weekly newspaper in America, black or white.
I believe Omar Wale Malcolm X was instrumental in starting the Muhammad Speaks.
I've heard some people dispute this fact, but that's my understanding, yes, that Malcolm X was in fact the one who started Muhammad Speaks.
Okay. In terms of Elijah Muhammad's conversion to Islam, there's a possibility of it being linked with certain forces within the UNIA. Is that,
yes, and in fact I've dealt with that in my book Race First, where I point out that the Ahmadiyya Muslims from Pakistan, they were very active in African American communities in the 1920s, and they had some kind of a working relationship with Garvey, because I came across at least 2 or 3 references where Ahmadiyya missionaries were allowed to speak at UNIA meetings. And then I came across a copy of the Ahmadiyya magazine, Muslim Sunrise, from 1920-something, 24 maybe, and where they were saying that they had recently converted 40 members of the UNIA in Detroit. And that was just around the time that Elijah joined the movement. And I know that some of the Qurans, for example, and other documents used by Elijah's Nation of Islam were Ahmadiyya Qurans and whatnot. So there's a strong circumstantial kind of a link there. Yes.
Indeed. I want to go on to Ho Chi Minh. Now, our understanding is that he was a regular attender at UNIA meetings, and he was really inspired by Marcus Mosiah Garvey.
Yes.
In terms of his revolutionary movement in Vietnam. Is that so?
Yes. Yeah, Ho Chi Minh said so himself. He told this to Robert Williams, an important African-American civil rights leader from the 60s and 70s. And then Robert Williams spoke at a lecture once in Boston. I was there, and I asked him, and he told me, yes, he verified it. Robert Williams was in exile from the United States at the time in China, and he journeyed to Vietnam. This is during the Vietnam War. And I believe he told me he sat right next to Ho Chi Minh during dinner. And Ho Chi Minh told him that, yes, he was based in New York for several months. He was a seaman. This is Ho Chi Minh. And Ho Chi Minh told him that he used to go religiously to meetings of the UNIA, and he used to contribute financially to the best of his ability. He really was a staunch follower of Garvey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that then make him a Garveyite?
It doesn't make him a Garveyite in the sense that one had to be of African ancestry to join the Garvey movement. So he clearly wasn't, a Garveyite in that sense. I guess he considered himself an admirer of Garvey, a follower of Garvey. So if one wants to define Garveyite that way, well, maybe one could say so, but not in any real, tangible, logical, or kind of
sensible. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for bringing some clarity there, Baba Tony. Also, we know that Kwame Nkrumah, you spoke about him earlier on, in being a member of WASU. He's also on record as saying that the most inspirational work was the Philosophies and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. Would you like to elaborate on that for us?
Yes, he did in fact say that of all the books he read, he said the one that had the greatest impact on his political development was the Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. I interviewed in 1971 a man originally from Grenada who was living in the Bronx in New York. And he told me that Kwame Nkrumah used to stay at his house. He was Kwame Nkrumah's landlord, during the summertime. Kwame was at Lincoln University, an African-American school in Pennsylvania, which is not that far from New York City. And during the summertime, he would sell fish and do other kinds of jobs. And apparently he lived in this man's house. And this man was a Garveyite.
Right.
And Mr. Whiteman told me that Mr. Whiteman, was the one who took Nkrumah to Garvey meetings. He also took Nkrumah, he told me, to meetings of Caribbean nationalist organizations, which is very fascinating in terms of Nkrumah's general Pan-African orientation. Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's great. Going back to Pan-Africanism, and going back to Amy Ashwood, sorry to kind of bring you back now. Amy Ashwood was fairly instrumental as well in some of the Pan-African...
the Pan-African Congresses.
Congresses.
There was one especially.
Congress.
The Pan-African Congress of 1945. That was organized by Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana and George Padmore of Trinidad. And Amy, this was like 5 years after Garvey died.
Yes.
And Amy was invited back to chair the first session. She was joint chair or co-chair, if you like, together with W.E.B. Du Bois. So she was in very good company, you might say.
Yeah, definitely. What's your next project, Baba Tony? I know you've
I have about a dozen going simultaneously. But I hope that the next one might be something called Global Garveyism.
Right.
Which is it's a collection of of edited articles dealing with the Garvey movement in about 30 places around the world. Places like Australia, South Africa, Buffalo, New York, Namibia, West Africa generally, and some other places, Trinidad, St. Vincent, etc. Okay,
that sounds worth waiting for. Just a couple of final questions, Baba Tony. Rose Pastor Stokes, now she was a platform speaker at least one of the UNIA public events. I mean, would you say as a result of non-Africans being on the platform, that makes the UNIA an integrationist organization?
No. When one is involved in high politics, one often speaks to people across the political divide. President Nixon of the United States went to China and met with the Chinese heads of government at a time when America was in the midst of its Cold War struggle against China and the Soviet Union and so on. Rose Pastor Stokes I think she was a Jewish lady married to a white, rich, liberal guy, called Anson Phelps Stokes. And she was some kind of a communist or socialist. And there was a black socialist group that had been infiltrated into the UNIA by the communists. They were known as the African Blood Brotherhood. And the idea was that they would bore from within. That's an expression the communists used to use, whereby they would bore into your movement and try and take it over from within. They would inject people into your movement, then they'd run for election. The next thing you know, one of this, unknown to you, you wouldn't be aware of the fact that they were acting, in concert. But so all of a sudden, one of these guys would be the chairman of the local branch, and the other one would be the secretary and the treasurer, and from that position, they would just strangle the organization, take it over, and turn it into something else, a communist branch or whatever. So this African Blood Brotherhood asked for permission to bring this white woman to address Garvey's convention. Now, Garvey was a race-first person. He didn't normally have too many white folks addressing him. But again, he wasn't totally hostile to any interaction with white people either, if the situation seemed to warrant it. But it did not necessarily mean that he was accepting them into his organization. Rose Pastor Stokes, she spoke. She invited Garveyites to join the communist movement, and she said, that Russia would look after them, and the Russians would be much greater friends towards them than the Americans had been, etc., etc., etc. Her pitch basically failed, and Garvey came and spoke right after her and pointed out that he didn't mind allowing other folks to speak once in a while, but he had no intention of having them in a movement, that this was an African person's movement, etc., etc. He reaffirmed his position right after her speech. So there's no way that anyone can plausibly use her presence there at that convention as an indication of some kind of policy of letting white people join the organization. That was not true at all.
Right. Well, that explodes that myth then. Now, another strange person on the platform was also I think it was a Grand Wizard at the time, these weird titles that they have in the Ku Klux Klan, who, well, we understand historically that Marcus Garvey engaged with this individual, and he did speak at one of the public events. Again, would you say that would be evidence then of integrationist leanings at least?
Garvey did have somebody called Powell from the White American Society, I think, or some such society, speak one time. I think that's in the Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. He met with the Ku Klux Klan in 1922. He was traveling through the country. When he got to the south and was getting ready to come through Atlanta, Georgia, the clan contacted him. This was at a clan's request, and asked for a summit meeting. I guess they acknowledged the fact that Garvey was the most powerful African in America, that he was organized, that even in the South he had the ability that no other organization did to inflict some, serious damage on the Ku Klux Klan. There were cases where Garveyites had actually whipped Klan members, that kind of thing. So they wanted a meeting, and both sides basically, outlined their positions, and both Garvey and the Klan were against race mixing and this kind of stuff. So they tried to work out some kind of an accommodation. It was strictly a political meeting at that level, and that's all that happened. Now Garvey's enemies, of course, tried to take that as
opposition.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yeah, that's basically all it was.
Okay,
yeah.
so no.
Yeah.
Okay. Once again, Baba Tony, it's been a pleasure to engage with you, and I know that our listeners will enjoy hearing from you. And please continue doing this fine work you're doing, and Memwari God and Mzumukuru, the ancestors, guide you and bless you. Tenamara.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
24-hour radio. It's a fact of life. 24-hour radio.
102.5, our Parish station.
And now this. 24-hour radio. And now this. 24-hour radio.
Galaxy Radio, 102.5, our Parish station.
Brothers and sisters, I want you to give it up right now. I want you to stand up, please, and give it up for Brother Leader Mbandaka, the messenger of our ancestors, the voice of our people. Can you hear him, please, brothers and sisters? Yellow! Tendai Mari, Tendai Mari, Tendai Mari, Mari Makurukuru, Mari Makurukuru, Mari Makurukuru, Kudzai Muzumukuru, Kudzai Muzumukuru, Kudzai Muzumukuru, Tendai Mari, Tendai Mari, Tendai Mari. Regai mazwi andino taura ne fungwa zimumuyo mangu zinzikwe ni mimwari. May the words of our mouths and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Jah of our creation. Tendai mwari, Tendai mwari, Tendai mwari, mwari kumburira i Afrika, ngai simunzire zitarayo. Mzwai miteoro yedu, isumuri yayo, itumuri yako. Uyamwe ya komborere, uyamwe ya musvene, isumuri yayo, itumuri yako. Tendai mwari, mwari, Jah, God, bless Africa. Lift up the name of Africa on high. Hear our humble prayers, O Mwari, O Jah. We, the family of Africa, we, this family of Africa, come, great spirits, come. Come and bless us. Come, great spirits, come. Come and be with us. We, the family of Africa. We, this family of Africa. Tendai Mwari, Tendai Mwari, Tendai Mwari, royal elders, queens and kings, princesses and princes of great Mama Africa. I bring greetings in the most precious, powerful and bountiful name of our motherland, Alkebu-Lan, Mama Africa, in the sacred spirits of our most gracious ancestors, and in a prayer for oneness, hope, and prosperity for all African people upon the face of Mother Earth. Of course, respect and honor is due to the gathered strong this afternoon for showing your beautiful smiling faces to this gathering of the African family to share in the honor and tribute and celebration of and to the name and the legacy of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, for there is none greater in the history of our people than that great man. He who crystallizes the words and the works of all the greats who came before him and lay the foundation for all who comes after. We say one so great must be honored, and it is a tiny tribute to name 31 days out of 365 after one so great. And anyone who is not happy with this development in our history, you have been calling this period August for all your life and never questioned it. But we are not the children of or the descendants of Augustus Caesar, are we? Come on. Neither are we Romans, are we, brothers and sisters? But even if we call ourselves Roman Catholic, look at yourself in the mirror and then hold up a picture of Constantine and tell me where is the similarity between you and a Roman? Come on, brothers and sisters. So we name this period as we've named the days of the week of the Unguza Sabbath. We've named this month Mosiah. But then on the 17th day of the 8th month of so-called 1887, 2 years after the Berlin Conference, when Europe sat down with a map of Africa, carving up Africa like a birthday cake or a wedding cake and sharing it up between them. One was born, the 13th child of a nucleus of mother and father and 11 children that had broken the womb of a woman called Sarah Garvey, but only 2 lived. The eminent prophet himself and an older sister, Sister Indiana. And somehow, when Sarah Garvey was with child, both her and Papa Garvey knew. They had a premonition, a divine premonition, that not only was this child going to be born, they knew it was going to be a son. And they knew that he was destined for a supreme achievement upon the earth. They knew he was going to be someone of eternal value to our people. Papa Garvey was a so-called maroon, but we don't use that name no more because of what it means. Wild beast, a Spanish word. He was a lost Ashanti because the Maroons were Ashanti people who were taken out of West Africa. Stored away in the Caribbean for work for the rest of our existence. Papa Garvey's father, Marcus Garvey Sr., was a descendant from those people. the Karamanti Ashantis. And they had a premonition that not only was this child going to live, but that this child was going to be a world wonder.
That's right, that's right.
When he was born, they took a long time to name him. They debated what he must be called because they still had in their psyche that names must characterize the child and give the child a mission in life. And they knew that this mission was no ordinary mission. They knew it. And so they debated whether they were going to call him Moses. They knew he was going to be a Messiah. They called him Mosiah. They used to call him Moses for short, and sometimes they called him Moses because they had the Bible. And they heard of the role of Moses. They read about Moses leading the children of Israel into freedom. Are you with me, brothers and sisters? Yes. So they called him Moses for short. And his father grew him up to be tough. He told Papa Garvey from birth, call no man massa.
Come on now, come on.
You know who we used to call massa? You know who we used to call massa? The white boy.
Yes.
That was instilled in his head. His mother had a deep sense of consciousness and raised him, as Dan Carew tells us, one of our historians tell us, raised him to have a race consciousness.
That's right, right.
So when he became now a young man, looking at the condition of his people in the Caribbean, he began to travel from 1910, looking around the world at our condition around the world. And he wasn't happy with what he saw. Right. We were at the bottom of every economic and social pile. That's not good enough for my people, he said. He said he looked around and asked, where is the black man's king and country? Where is his queen, his president? Yes. Where is the black man and woman's men and women of big affairs? Yes. He said, I saw that there was none, and I said, I will produce it.
That's right.
I will
right.
produce it. He started the UNIA. And between 1914, when he started the UNIA, and 1920, the UNIA were able to call together 25,000 African people around the world.
Yes.
To focus on and discuss and debate the conditions and a solution to our condition around the world. That is remarkable. By the year 1923, 6,000 members, and in a short while thereafter, 6 million. And in a short while thereafter, 11 million people, over 1,000 branches around the world. Every continent on the face of the earth had branches, not a branch, branches of the UNIA. When the name of Garvey, the legacies of Garvey were banned in almost every country on the earth. And despite all of that, the word was still reaching our people all over Africa. South Africa, West Africa, East Africa, North Africa. The pages of the Negro world, as it was then called, saturated Africa and the Caribbean, showing you that there is a God. There is a creator in the universe that rules in the affairs of man and woman. There is a creator in the universe that's sympathetic to our condition. If we knew how to call upon that creator and stop calling upon the gods of other people who have been ignoring us for hundreds of years.
Good song, good song. Good song.
Garvey wrote to Robert Monton from Jamaica. He had planned to come to America to hook up with Booker T. Washington. Yeah. Brother Booker T. died. He wrote to Robert Monton, who had taken over from Booker T. What did he say? I am a man with a mission from God. Right. I am a man with a mission from God. This was no ordinary man, I'm telling you. This was a man who was possessed. I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, by the Spirit of the Creator of the universe. This was a man who was possessed, brothers and sisters, by the spirit of the irritated genie.
Yes, come on.
Read Jehuti. A man possessed. You must understand, brothers and sisters, that the foundation of Mosiah's ministry and mission was a divine foundation. Many of us can only hold on to the political legacy.
Yes, come on.
There is no political legacy of Marcus Garvey to talk about without a spiritual legacy. The spiritual was the foundation. The political legacy was where he, realizing that God himself, herself, also manifests through material reality. He wanted to see Mari, God, the African God, made manifest in the material lives of African people. There is no God to praise. There is no God to say in the midst of poverty. Hear me good. Mari is not the architect of poverty. Mari is not the creator of poverty and decadence and immorality. Look at Garvey's message again.
Come on now.
We say we're Garveyites, but what do we mean? We're Garveyites, but I don't believe in God.
Come on now.
You're not a Garveyite.
No, sir. No, sir.
I'm Garveyite, but I don't believe in organization.
Word song.
You're not a Garveyite.
Oh.
I'm a Garveyite, but I don't believe in race first. You're not a Garveyite.
No.
See if you understand me, brothers and sisters. I'm a Garveyite, but me can't bother with black people. You can't trust black people. Me can't bother with them. You're not a Garveyite. Garvey believed in unity.
That's right.
Garvey was an organizer. Garvey was a God man. Garvey was a race man. Race first, he said. Race first. Africa for the African. I'm a Garveyite, but I don't believe it's back to Africa business. You are not a Garveyite. I'm a Garveyite, but I can't bother forget about my bed for the liberation work. You're not a Garveyite. See, being a Garveyite is more than sentiments.
Come on, talk.
You understand what I'm saying? Being a Garveyite is more than being in love with the flesh of the man or being in love with the wonder of the man. You have to want to be the man. Garvey said, look for me in the whirlwind. Look for me in the storm. He said, I'll come back in a cyclone, the plague or the pestilence, or as God would have me.
That's right.
He's coming back through the forces of nature.
That's right, yes.
And which force in nature is the best force to manifest Garvey? But the people out of which Garvey came, the people for whom Garvey lived and Garvey died.
Africans!
Papa Garvey shook up the whole world. I don't care which religion you come from. You cannot show me a prophet or a Messiah, whatever you call your most exalted individual. You cannot show me one who shook up the world in the way Garvey did in his time.
Right. Right.
Jesus Christ never did it. Prophet Muhammad never did it. Right. Buddha, Krishna, none of the others never did it in their time.
Right.
The world religions came after and long after their death. The universalization. In Papa Garvey's time, he shook up the world.
Right.
Him never have internet. Him never have computer. Him never have TV. Him never have telephone. Him never have aeroplane. But he shook up the world. His words were heard in every corner of the universe. And yet, he was banned. Come on, brothers and sisters. I'm saying that only a man or a woman possessed by God could do that. No, there had to be a more supreme force in that man to have made him so successful. I heard at a conference he had in Canada in 1919, I believe, and also the International Congress, whatever.
Convention.
In 1920, convention, that's the word. Papa Garvey just fold me up so I can't get the word them out. I think he might try to get some African word through me, but I can't handle it at the moment. Yeah? So I kind of handicapped. Tendai Mwari. And as Brother Ishaka Musa Barashango told us at Africa Liberation Day last year, that at this conference, convention, not only were there esteemed African delegates there, but people like what about the Indian one then? Gandhi, Mao Zedong, Ho Chi Minh, Mao Zedong of China, Ho Chi Minh of Vietnam, were all there. All of them were avid readers and studiers of Garvey's word.
Listen.
And just in case anybody want to think, oh well, Garvey must have been a universalist. Brothers and sisters, read your Mosiah Daily Affirmations, where what we've tried to do is to include, to make this book in its simplest form span the various subjects of Garvey's legacy in as complete a manner as you can do in a 43-page document. But Papa Garvey made it clear to us, don't sing the songs of other races.
Yes.
Don't write the poems of other races.
Yes.
Don't heal the heroes of other races. Heal only your own. Sing only your own songs. Say only your own poems that glorify your own race and your own nation. He made that clear. Russia was studying Garvey. Did you know that? The whole world, China, Russia, Asia, everybody was tuning into Garvey. You hear me, brothers and sisters? Papa Garvey set out to unite 400 million African people around the world at that time. That was the estimated global population of African people. He set out with that vision in mind. 400 million, and he got 11 million registered. So if 11 million were registered, you know there must have been at least 100 million, because each of those 11 million would know some 10 people. So you know there was at least 100 million African people around the world who were in touch directly with Papa Garvey. Because his following was greater than the people who registered as members. That was 1/4 of the African world. They couldn't understand in China, in Asia, in Russia, how a man without a land at his control, without a nation at his control, without the equipment that governments had of that day, could have amassed such support worldwide. They couldn't work it out. But that was the power of the word. In the beginning was the word, and the word was with Jah, and the word was Jah. In the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. Our ancestors taught us that. You see it in the Bible, but it didn't originate with the Bible. It originated in African tradition. That saying. Is everybody with me, brothers and sisters? That great man was possessed by the power of the Most High. This is what I'm trying to get through to you this afternoon. That great man was the manifestation of God in our midst that lifted us up. And brothers and sisters, out of Garvey came one of the greatest spiritual, cultural movements of our history, Rastafari. Papa Garvey had a program for every single aspect of African life.
That's right.
Economic, political, spiritual, social, cultural, everything was on his agenda and the agenda of the UNIA. And he had some great people, men and women, with him and around him, who were great also in their own right. There would have been no Harlem Renaissance without Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Garvey went to America 1916, had the international conference, convention 1920. The Harlem Renaissance started in 1920. There were 4 runners to it, but it took off in 1920, concurrent with the Garvey movement. And when the Garvey movement went down after Papa Garvey's imprisonment and being expelled from America, the Harlem Renaissance went down. He left America and went to Jamaica in 1927. And in 1930, the Rastafari movement was born.
That's right.
Anywhere Papa Garvey went, the spirit of African liberation went with him.
That's right. Good song.
So when people tell you, brothers and sisters, Garvey failed, I can't think of anything that hurts me more. See, we think like white people too much. We think in a linear manner. We think with blinkers. No, Papa Garvey was to also face abject betrayal and criticism and attacks from his own people. Inasmuch as, brothers and sisters, when a Messiah manifests, when a prophet manifests, you will find that the righteous, the seekers after truth and righteousness, will follow the prophet in multitudes. You will find that.
Yes.
That is the power of the prophet. That is the power of a Messiah. But you find also the converse. You will find that the heathens, the backbiters, the sinners will also rage at the presence of the prophet. They will foul-mouth the prophet, back-talk the prophet. They will go behind his or her back. That's nothing new. All our great leaders, all our great heroes and sheroes were betrayed.
Right.
And Papa Garvey was betrayed.
Right.
So now you will hear things and you will read things that are designed, that are aimed, devised to distort Papa Garvey's legacy. And that's why we, the children of Garvey,
Come on.
need to rise up and need to take Garvey's mantle and move it forward and become the defenders of his words and his work. Tendai Mwari. I read from J.A. Rogers, what's the name of that book? World's Great Men of Color. And in a subtle, sometimes not so subtle kind of way, casting all kinds of aspersions on Papa Garvey, although he was a dreamer, he was a deceiver, he was a bigot. These are the kind of words that not just J.A. Rogers but others use against Marcus Garvey. Trying to make him look as though he was some kind of psychotic. That he was just self-possessed. A man who built a movement of millions of people. A multi-million-dollar movement who died a pauper. And you call him self-possessed?
Listen good.
Huh? The sacrifices that man made, and you call him self-possessed. He paid the ultimate price for you and me. And so we must condemn. We don't mind constructive criticism, but we will condemn anyone who speaks foul of the Messiah. Garvey spoke to our people. He didn't just speak to our physical ear. If you really want to move African people, you can't just appeal to the physical ear. You can't just appeal to our intellect. You have to go deep into our psyche, deep into our soul. And that's what Papa Garvey did. So sometimes he spoke in metaphors and parables and similes. Sometimes he ventured into the realm of the supernatural. But he always brought us back down to earth.
That's right.
You have some people who will go up there and suspend you into the celestial world. Papa Garvey wasn't a celestialist. But he knew there was a greater power.
That's right.
But he would focus and harness that greater power for work and for analysis upon the earth. You don't understand Garvey because you have lost the Spirit of God in your own soul. So you can't qualify. You can't qualify that deeper spiritual essence of a man like Garvey. Don't go there. Don't touch it. You can't deal with it. Don't touch it. Leave it to those who understand it, or at least are trying to understand it. Because a man who builds a movement that has businesses, that has in that time a fleet of ships. In those days, a ship would be equivalent to an aeroplane. You can't call that man an idealist. You have some of the most so-called practical, intellectual thinkers before, during, and after Garvey who couldn't do a fraction of what he did. W.E.B. Du Bois couldn't do a fraction with all his doctorates. Couldn't do a fraction of what Papa Garvey did. George Podmore couldn't do a fraction of what Garvey did. C.L.R. James couldn't do a fraction of what Garvey did. J.A. Rogers couldn't touch Garvey's legacy. As bright as the whole of them was. I tell you something, I couldn't match him for intellect either. Neither intellect, intelligence, or integrity, or intuition. You tell me that man was self-possessed? A dead people came among a dead people. Just there prostrating in front of Bakra. Man, leave us with our back straight.
That's right, yes.
First time in years now, the African going to stand up like a man and a woman. And you call him self-possessed? I'll debate any of you any time of the day or night with the power of Mwari.
Yes.
Then you might want to call me self-possessed. No, because I'm going to throw my whole self into it. So them call Papa Garvey a dreamer. Because Papa Garvey went right into our heart and our soul and began to open up our inner beings, began to touch us, began to heal the pain, the degradation, the shame that we were feeling in ourselves. We were so subdued and so recluse for so many years, and Papa Garvey came along and Papa Garvey said, "Rise!" Yes. When we hear his voice, it was like a trumpet. Right. Another time it was like thunder. Right. Another time it was like violin. Right. Another time it was like the drum. He was a master. He was a master at touching and awakening the spirits of African people. He knew the soul of the African, and he knew if you can touch the soul of the African, you have the African for life. That's right. Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana said his greatest inspiration came from reading philosophies and opinions. Right. And hearing the words of Garvey. Nnamdi Azikiwe of Nigeria also said that his political consciousness and his allegiance to his people came when he read the works of Garvey. Jomo Kenyatta, before he went off the rail, was moved by Garvey. The ANC, most of its members, the senior African members of the 20s and 30s were Garveyites. Understand this, when Garvey was ousted from America, all the little lapdog them when it used to cuss him. All the little white people lapdog them. When it jump up in the white people lap. For another biscuit. All of them were chasing after Garvey's program. Some of them were sent by the same white slave master who was just doing their work. Others became to realize the hypocrisy of the European oppressor and that he would never change. And picked up Garvey's work. All of them had to pick up Garvey's work. All of them had to pick up Garvey's work, and some of them apologized. I'm not convinced by all the apologies that came. Personally, we're too quick to forgive. Do all the worst crimes against this race, and you just say, "Forgive me," and we forgive. No, you must go through trial and sentence And justice must be done. Because in the confusion, the destruction that you cause, you also cost lives. There must be a penalty to be paid. Are you with me, brothers and sisters? I'm not going to be much longer. I'm going to close very soon. Tendai Mwari. Let me say very quickly that Papa Garvey's philosophy, the objective that Papa Garvey was aiming towards, is for us to establish a Pan-African, a nationalist, Pan-African, African world and African nationhood. Right. Are you with me, brothers and sisters? Yes. And by that he was talking about the total liberation and unification of all African people on the face of the earth under a nationalist continental government of African people. That's what he was talking about. He wasn't talking about socialism. He made it clear to us that he wasn't talking about socialism or communism. By nationalists, he meant a race-first objective. He meant self-reliance. He meant self-governance. He meant repatriation. He meant separatism. He meant proud heritage. He meant land acquisition. He meant self-defense. He was talking about doing for self, empowering self for the liberation of self. Are you with me, brothers and sisters? He wasn't talking about alignment or allegiance. He was talking about dealing with self. That's what he was talking about. Tendai Mwari. He says the greatest human possession is character. That's right. The greatest human possession is character. The man, woman of sterling character is the great builder. That's right. Not only a builder of himself, herself, she builds around himself or herself. She builds her community. She helps to build a world. Listen good. Because this is Garvey's legacy. If we're saying we're Garveyites, this is what we ought to be committed to. She can afford to lose her wealth and health, because with her character, she can recover them. With sterling character, you can destroy a world and rebuild it. You can go down into the depths and then rise to the heights. You can meet adversity and laugh at it on your way back to prosperity. Come on. That's the wisdom of Papa Garvey. Those of sterling worth, with the urge of honesty, of self-confidence, of nobility, sees no defeat, admits no handicaps, nor barriers she must climb to the surface. That's Papa Garvey teaching us about sterling character. And much of his teachings to us was about building strong, resolute character. It's about developing moral principles, moral precepts in our lives. He didn't just talk politics, he taught morality. Because immorality has been cultivated among us because they know that it's righteousness that exalts a nation. And they know that it's sin and decadence that destroys a nation. And that's decadence. And it will destroy us. Righteousness exalts a nation. Righteousness, I said, exalts a nation. And we are about righteousness today. So let me just, my last words of Papa Garvey that I want to share with you is Papa Garvey's season. Garvey lives. Garvey lives. Mosiah lives. Tendai Mwari. Let me just read very quickly. Mosiah lives, baby. That's right. Hail Lord for that. Hail Lord. All right. No, that's serious. No, that's the spirit of the ancestors moving now. Right? You know, if we was talking foolishness, she would be uttering foolishness back to us. Do you understand me? Every one of these here are learning. And if we stood up here like a bunch of intellectuals as well, then we'll drop asleep long time. You think they will sit down up all this time listening? Then we'll sleep and wake and go back to sleep. So we have to understand the power of culture. We're transmitting culture knowledge every time we come together. Tendai Mwari. Tendai Mwari, baby. Tendai Mwari. Heal him as well. Heal him up. Papa Garvey says, and this is a message I want us to leave with today. And we have a lot of work to do on ourselves. Please, brothers and sisters, listen carefully. This is not me. I'm just representing the great and most eminent one. Hear me good. Let no one inoculate you with evil doctrines to suit her own convenience. Charity begins at home. So first, to thine own self be true, and thou canst not then be false to no man. For God and nature first made us what we are, and out of our creative genius we make ourselves what we want to be. Follow always that great law. Let God and the sky be our limits, and eternity our measurement. There is no height to which you cannot climb with the active intelligence of your own mind. Mind creates, and as much as we desire in nature, we can have through the creation of our own minds. But today, being scientifically the weaker race, you must teach scientifically the weaker race. You treat others only as they treat you. But in your homes and everywhere possible, you must teach the higher developments of science to your children. And make sure that we have a race of scientists par excellence. For, he says, listen, in religion and science lies our only hope to withstand the evil designs of modern materialism. In religion and science, he puts religion and science on the same level. He gives it the same importance. Spirituality is the key for awakening the minds of a sleeping people, because the mind is awakened by the soul. The mind is awakened by the revival of the soul. If the soul is dead, the mind is dead. You will be a thinking zombie, thinking you're thinking when you're not thinking. See if you understand me. Only when your soul is cleansed. What he's saying is, you can be of no use to your race if, first of all, you don't sort out your morals. Religion, spirituality deals with your morals, deals with your conscience, develops your conscience. Then you will use science for the exaltation of the people. You will use science to edify and inform the people. You will use science to glorify the creator of the universe. You will use science to lift yourself up from the muck and the mire of degradation and decadence. And in the words of the eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the Messiah, you will use science to raise yourself up, to rise like the mighty people you are and accomplish what you will. Rise, you mighty people. You can accomplish whatever you will. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters.
Ancestors, blacker than 1,000 good nights, African ancestors, it is to you that we, your children, give respect and honor. O ancestors, we call upon you and welcome you in this place. African ancestors, let your presence fill this place. O ancestors, who have been purposely excluded from the history books so that the world would not know of your greatness. Our African ancestors, who gave civilization to the world. Our African ancestors, who gave the arts to the world. Our African ancestors, who gave music to the world. Our African ancestors, who gave the sciences to the world. Our African ancestors, who gave mathematics to the world. Our African ancestors, who gave medicine to the world. Our African ancestors, who gave literature to the world. Our African ancestors, who gave philosophy to the world. Our African ancestors, who gave God consciousness to the world. Oh, ancestors, we thank you for devoting your life to make a future for us, your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Now stand with us, strengthen us, guide us, teach us, and protect us from the snare of our enemies. Rise up, O African ancestors, and let our enemies be scattered, and give us the wisdom and the boldness to deal with our oppressors and those who would hinder the liberation and empowerment of all people. Rise up, O African ancestors, and live in us, and we will not fail to honor you. We will not fail to respect you. We will not fail to hear you, and we will not betray you. Ashe.